We kick off, I'll explain a little bit about ECO-UNESCO. So you're very welcome to Eco Week. It's taking place during SDGs Week, Sustainable Development Goals. And we run this every year, and it's an opportunity to learn more about the different issues and challenges and work that's taking place in Ireland and afar. So who are we? ECO-UNESCO is a youth organisation. So we were founded back in 1986 by a group of young people as a club originally. And over the years, as the needs and the interest grew, so did the group, and it's developed into what it is today. So our overall aim is to empower the young people who are involved with us to help protect our environment through a variety of different programs and activities. So we're one of UNESCO's affiliated clubs, as well as a Sustainable Development Goals ambassador. And what that means is that our work looks at not just the issues, but looks at it through a sustainable development lens. So covering a wide range of different topics. And so, yeah, we work predominantly with young people between the ages of 10 to 25 from all over the island in schools, youth groups, communities, all to help facilitate young people to develop skills and awareness. So, today's session is called Wild About Nature and Protecting Life on Land. And we're here with Ulster Wildlife, and we'll explore SDG 15, Life on Land. So learning how we can protect the species and habitats around us, like barn owls, squirrels, hedgehogs, through different conservation projects that are happening right on our doorstep. So our focus is on SDG 15, Life on Land. And in case you're not familiar, the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals, are 17 shared objectives that address major global challenges like poverty, climate change, inequality, and they provide a universal blueprint for helping people and the planet thrive together. So what this one kind of looks at is around healthy ecosystems, how our land and forests provide food, clean water, air, climate support, so forests and ecosystems and how they regulate the climate change, protecting biodiversity, so ensuring plants and animals survive, and then future livelihoods. Sustainable land use supports people and communities. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Ross from Ulster Wildlife, and he's going to take you through a bit about his work and about the life on land element. So, Ross, if you want to take control of the screen,
I will take
fire
control.
away.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that introduction, Miriam. Hopefully that is loading up. Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Ross. I work for a charity called Ulster Wildlife. We work across the whole of Northern Ireland and doing a variety of different conservation projects and protecting our natural world. And I have the real privilege of working on these three species that you see here in front of you. So I work on barn owls, red squirrel, and hedgehog conservation across the whole of Northern Ireland. I am one lucky fella. So today I'm just going to touch on kind of what my work involves, how we protect these species, and why it's important to protect species and how they kind of fit into our wider landscape and our ecosystems. So just a wee brief who we are. We are a charity based in the north, and we protect wildlife havens. We've got 20 different nature reserves all across Northern Ireland with lots of different habitats and lots of different types of ecosystems. We bring people closer to nature. We work with community groups, we work with schools, we work with young people to try and get people outdoors and enjoying nature and appreciating it for what it is. And then, of course, we save wildlife. We have a really exciting project at the minute about reintroducing native oysters to the seas around Ireland and bringing back the ecosystems that have been lost from their disappearance. But I'm going to be focusing on the land today. I'm going to be focusing on barn owls, red squirrels, and hedgehogs. So barn owls, why are we conserving barn owls? Well, In Ireland, they are a red listed bird. This means that they are endangered towards extinction, and they've actually come out of a really, really bad period. We're down to about 150 pairs across the whole of the island of Ireland, but now we're kind of looking more around 500 pairs, 600 pairs, which is much, much better. However, in Northern Ireland, things are very different. They're actually on the edge of extinction. There's fewer than 30 nesting pairs in the whole of the north. So they really are on the risk of being extinct in the north. So a big part of my job is trying to ensure that doesn't happen. Why are they on the edge? Why are they in decline in Ireland? Well, there's lots of different threats facing them. The big one would be their loss of habitat. Our kind of approach to our agriculture has been to intensify our land use over the last 50, 60 years. There's more people, we need to make more food, and we need to generate income from generating food, and it means that a lot of the kind of quieter areas of the farm, or the areas that weren't in production, are now in production, and we've lost a lot of our natural habitats within our farmland landscape that would have been really vital for barn owls. We've also lost a lot of their nesting places. Traditionally, barn owls really like to nest in the hollows of trees and tree trunks, but Ireland is very it's something like 11% of its land cover is trees, and only 2% of that is native broadleaf woodland. So the big broadleaf trees, the beech trees, the oak trees that have the natural cavity in the trunks, that's what the barn owls would traditionally nest in. But given the name barn owl, they also nest in buildings too. But unfortunately, a lot of our stone buildings are being knocked down. They're being replaced by big metal sheds, which don't have the same spaces for them to nest in. Then they're killed on roads. Climate change is changing our weather, and that's affecting our barn owls as well. And then also they're at risk from rodenticide. If they eat a rat that has ingested poison, but the rat hasn't perished, then the barn owl can take in that poison and accumulates inside their body, and eventually it can kill the barn owl. Here is a map made in conjunction with Birdwatch Ireland, who work on barn owls in the south, and together you can see the general distribution of barn owls in Ireland. You can see all those little yellow spots. Those are barn owl sightings that have been reported to us, and you can see they're doing quite well now in the south, kind of Cork and Kerry, and everywhere down there is like really, really strong heartland for barn owls. But as you move further east and as you move further north, those yellow dots kind of dissipate, and all those reasons that I'm talking about are one of the reasons why they've kind of disappeared from these areas, and much more reasons as well, which I don't have time to get into. So what are we doing about it? Well, Ulster Wildlife, we work with landowners and community groups. We offer them advice about how they can manage their land better for barn owls. We give them support when they need it, if they have nesting barn owls, and how to protect them even further. You can see there that there's a few nest boxes. We put up barn owl nest boxes for them to replicate those nesting places that are being lost. They're very big, and that is to replicate the tree cavity on the inside. And as someone who's afraid of heights and has to go up the trees to put them up, I think they're horrendous. But the barn owls absolutely love them, which is great. And here is a little demonstration of them absolutely loving them. This is a pair of barn owls of ours who have nested in the same nest box for the last 5 years, and every year the same pair come back and they rebuild their bond. In the wintertime they go their own separate ways, but in the early spring they do lots of mutual preening like this to reestablish their bond as they start to nest again. So some of our nest boxes have cameras. This helps us with monitoring their nests. So if we know what's going on inside, we know that we need to take action, or if we don't need to take action to protect the babies. One thing that we do, which is really, really useful, is that we ring the barn owl chicks. You can see this image in the bottom right. There's some researchers there are putting a little metal ring on the barn owl leg, and those metal rings have a little ID code, so that if the owl is ever found again, then we know where it was born, we know where it's come from, we know how long it's been alive. All these interesting data points that help us feed into the barn owl conservation across the whole of the island. And here is a demonstration of 2 wee barn owl chicks. Barn owls have a really unique strategy in terms of raising their young. Most birds hatch all of their eggs at the same time, so the mother can go and feed them all at the same time. Barn owls do something slightly different, where their eggs hatch out sequentially. And this means there's always an eldest chick and there's always a youngest chick. So you can see in this image here, the one that's older has got all of its adult feathers, whereas the younger chick is all nice and fluffy. This is a survival strategy. So basically, if there is times where there's not much food, the adults will target feed the oldest chick to ensure that at least one baby will survive. But we've had some good barn owl years in recent years, and so you can see here the oldest chick and the youngest chick have done very well in this regard. And here's another clip of a barn owl nest site from this year. If you have the sound up, you might hear them calling. These chicks haven't yet learned how to fly, so they're flapping their wings and building up their muscles so that when they're ready to leave the nest, they can go fly away on their own. Where do they fly to? Well, a bit of a surprise to us. Whenever barn owl babies fledge, they kind of don't return to their home territory. They kind of leave their parents and they go and find their own territory somewhere else. And we thought until recently that they kind of flew maybe 10 miles down the road and set up shop there, when in fact, actually, our ringing has shown some really interesting data. So this is an example of a barn owl that was ringed in County Kerry in July in 2015. And it was found dead, unfortunately, killed on the road just outside Derry in March. That's a huge distance of 220 miles. And so the owl wasn't even a year old and managed to travel the whole length of the island of Ireland. And it just goes to show that if we want to protect barn owls, we have to protect them all across the island of Ireland. Move on to squirrels now. Squirrels were once very common throughout the whole island. They're now, they nearly went extinct twice, I think, in their history, but they've actually starting to make a little bit of a comeback in the last 10 years or so, which is brilliant. Unfortunately, they're still, because a lot of their woodlands are very isolated and fragmented across the landscape, so it's very hard for squirrels to move from woodland to woodland, and it's really important that they are able to spread their genetic material to maintain the genetic diversity of their population so that they have a long-term future. So the threats that are currently facing them at the minute, loss of woodlands. If we keep felling woodlands, then we will lose areas for our squirrels to live. And the connectivity of our landscape, allowing squirrels to move between different woodland populations. But the big thing, the big threat towards red squirrels is the invasive American grey squirrel. So this is a problem of our own making. And grey squirrels were brought over from America, and they have a really bad impact on our red squirrels. They outcompete red squirrels for food. They have a really efficient digestive system, which means that they can eat food, nuts and berries before they're ripe, and basically they can clear an area out of food before the red squirrels can get at it. But they also spread a disease called squirrel pox, and the grey squirrels are immune to squirrel pox, but unfortunately it is lethal to our red squirrels. So wherever you have both these species of squirrels together, the grey squirrels will always win out and the red squirrels will die out. We've got some maps here just to demonstrate this. Here's a map of Ireland. The red is red squirrels, the grey is grey, and the orange is where both are found. And all the grey squirrels in Ireland came from a wedding present in County Longford. 12 grey squirrels were gifted to a couple. And all the grey squirrels in Ireland came from these 12 grey squirrels. And you can see here in this map that red squirrels were kind of found everywhere across Ireland where there's good woodland. You see in the west there the areas which are aren't well wooded, mostly bogs, and the coastal winds buffet. There's not much woodland in those areas, but everywhere else, red squirrels were prevalent. However, as the century moved on, the grey squirrel spread kind of kept coming, and a lot of areas red squirrels had gone extinct from. They're still clinging on in many places, and they've done quite well in the west and they've done quite well in the south because the grey squirrels never reached them. But we've lost red squirrels from an awful lot of our woodlands in Ireland. However, Ulster Wildlife, we're doing lots of work in the north to help protect them. We work with lots of volunteers and community groups and other organisations to help protect our red squirrels, help plant trees to connect different red squirrel populations up. We control the grey squirrels, and we also supplementary feed red squirrels occasionally in times of really bad winters, etc. So we build these wee squirrel feeders that we can feed the red squirrels with. Of course, I can't forget, I always forget, our biggest ally at the minute is the pine marten. The pine marten is another species which nearly went extinct in Ireland. It's kind of like a big weasel, about the size of a cat, that can climb trees. And naturally, it's native to Ireland and naturally feeds on lots of different things, including rodents, birds, and even nuts and berries and fungi, just like squirrels do. But the key thing is that pine martens eat squirrels. And you would think, oh, how is that a good thing for red squirrels? Well, actually, they eat grey squirrels too. In fact, they eat more grey squirrels than they do red squirrels. And there's still lots of ongoing research to kind of determine exactly how and why this is happening. But the impact at the end of the day is that pine martens are removing grey squirrels and red squirrels are making a comeback across Ireland because of the pine marten, which is brilliant. And here's a very brief map of an all-Ireland squirrel survey. You see there 2012 and then 2019. There's more red dots on the map in 2019, and Ulster Wildlife is hoping to collaborate with the University of Galway next year to do an update. Hopefully there'll be even more red dots on the map next year. This is just a wee quick video just to demonstrate how we survey for red squirrels. We put up a squirrel feeder, which looks a bit like a bird box. However, the roof can come off, so birds can't get in and get the food, but the squirrels can lift up the roof. They grab a wee nut and they can sit happy as Larry having a wee peanut. And then we put up a camera, and this allows us to monitor where the squirrels are across the country and also how they're doing and whether there's any grey squirrels or even pine martens as well. My third species, the hedgehog. Hopefully we've maybe had a glimpse of a hedgehog. Maybe this is an animal more of us will be familiar with than the other two. Maybe my favourite. They are absolutely wonderful. Really interesting thing about hedgehogs is they haven't really been studied very well in Ireland historically, but they are almost certainly in decline from what they were doing. And some preliminary research suggests that they're doing better in our gardens than they are in the countryside now. And they're kind of facing very similar issues to the barn owls and the red squirrels. They're losing their habitat. They like really insect-rich habitats with lots of cover, hedgerows and species-rich grassland, these kinds of things. And again, their habitats are fragmented. They're hard to move around, and they can't fly like the barn owls, and they can't jump and run as fast as the red squirrels. They often get squashed on the roads. Unfortunately, that's the way I see them most commonly now, as pancakes on the edge of the road. And because there's less of these insect-rich habitats, there's less food for our hedgehogs as well. We collaborated with the University of Galway to do the first ever Irish hedgehog survey across the whole of Ireland. And so there's a PhD student in Galway that was kind of looking at hedgehog distribution and where they live and how they're doing and different survey techniques. And so you can see this map here on the left-hand side from 2020 and 2021. We got people to report their sightings of hedgehogs, and we got over 5,000 records for those 2 years, which is absolutely brilliant. Everyone loves a hedgehog and everyone loves to see a hedgehog. So they were in more places than we thought they would be, but also they're not in a lot of places that we expected them as well. You can see lots of gaps in that map as well. So I'll talk to the end about submitting your own sightings. If you think there's a gap there where you live and you have a hedgehog, you should let us know. So we can't protect our animals, we can't protect our biodiversity if we don't know it exists. So it's really important to report any sightings of wildlife that we have. Ulster Wildlife also have a wildlife gardening project called Let Nature In, which has lots of advice on our website about how you can do things, even small things in your garden that can make it better for wildlife. And there's a whole leaflet there about things that you can do for hedgehogs. Two really fun ones are you can build a hedgehog house. Hedgehogs need somewhere safe to den in the spring and the summer when they're raising their little hoglets. But they also hibernate during the winter time, so they need somewhere safe and secure that they can spend the winter. But also, I was talking about habitat that's being fragmented. Hedgehogs in one night can move over 1 kilometre. So if you have hedgehogs in your garden, they're probably using lots of different gardens. And now it's very hard to navigate that landscape because you've got all of the fences in the way. So we often advise people to cut a little hole in the bottom, a wee hedgehog highway, so the hedgehogs can move through lots of people's gardens and take advantage of all the rich resources that they have. I have here maybe my favourite video of our hedgehog. This is sent in to us by a member. If you have the sound on, you might be able to hear a hedgehog crunching on some dog food here. A cute wee noses that sniff out wee insects. And the hedgehog does something at the end of this video, which I think is just adorable. Wee hedgehog sneeze. Wee hedgehog sneeze. Oh, bless. So yeah, that's hedgehogs. So why do we work on conserving these species? Well, conserving species is really important to preserve our biodiversity. This is the suite of different species that work together in our landscape, because if we protect our biodiversity, we protect our ecosystems. Now, ecosystems are so vital to our natural processes. You might hear the term ecology kind of thrown out when talking about ecosystems and wildlife within landscapes. Ecology is the scientific study of the interactions between living things and their environment. Not the living things themselves, not the geology or the climate, it's the interactions. Our natural world is so complex, it's so difficult to understand. There's an entire science based on just the interactions and how all of these different species inhabit our natural world and how they behave has often very big impacts across a landscape. For example, we have our red squirrels. Red squirrels are actually ecosystem engineers. Red squirrels don't hibernate in the wintertime. A lot of people think they do, but they actually just slow down and they spend most of the day sleeping in their trays, which is what we call their nests. And they survive in the winter through food they have stored in the autumn time, or cached is another term we use. They cache food in piles, maybe at the base of a tree, and most of the time they will bury individual seeds and nuts across a woodland. Now, one squirrel can bury up to 3,000 nuts on its own. And they do a remarkable job remembering where they all are, but they still forget where 70% of the nuts they bury are. So 70% of the nuts they bury are actually turning into new trees. Now, that's still something like 800, 900 individual nuts they're remembering in the whole woodland where they've buried. I can't remember where my car keys are right this very moment. So that's very impressive for red squirrels to still remember that much. And they can survive off that. And this plays a really important role in the woodland health because it keeps the forest regenerating. And what's really, really cool is that trees have actually learned to take advantage of this. Trees go through something called a mast year. And mast years happen maybe every 5 years or maybe every 7 years, where basically They produce 10 times the amount of food, 10 times the amount of seeds in 1 year, and the squirrels just get totally overwhelmed and they bury so many different seeds all across the woodland, and they don't even eat like 5% of them. And this is really, really important for the trees because it means they get to spread their progeny very far away from the tree themselves. The trees obviously can't move. And so this means that more trees are being sprouted in that year in more locations. And it's really important for the individual tree that they're spreading their genetics further away from the parent tree. But also it's really important for the woodland health as well, not just for all the new trees growing, but also for the genetic diversity of the woodland as well. So it's something that you can see is these two different kind of species kind of not working together because one's exploiting the other and the other's exploiting the other, but how together they have this system of life that kind of keeps the whole habitat regenerating. And we have barn owls and hedgehogs. They kind of work a little bit differently. They kind of exist within our landscapes and our ecosystems, but we kind of see them as flagship species. They're indicators of the health of our wider landscape. If barn owls and hedgehogs are doing well, then we know that there's lots of food and a habitat available for both these species. But that's not what we're seeing at the minute. We're seeing a slight decline, unfortunately, for, let's say slight decline, drastic in the barn owl sense, but a slight decline for hedgehogs. So what are they missing? What do they need? Well, insect-rich habitats kind of are the key for a lot of different species. If there's lots of insect-rich habitats, hedgehogs do very, very well. If there's lots of insect-rich habitats, small mammals do very well. Mice and shrews especially really rely on being able to have lots of insects to forage on. If there's lots of insects to forage on, it means that the floral health is really good. So there'll be lots of seeds and nuts for the mice and the rats to feed on. And then the barn owls do very well if they are doing well. On top of that, insect-rich habitats are really good for soil health. There's a big emphasis on soil health at the minute. The way that we farm is degrading our soils. Improving our soils is so important. Having there's a whole ecosystem of microbes and microscopic organisms that are improving the health of our soils that are absolutely vital for us to survive. So what kinds of things are insect-rich habitats? Robust, thick hedgerows, rough grassland, scrubland, wetlands, and woodlands. All of these different habitats can be very small, but can exist in a wider landscape to have a really important and functional ecosystem. So here's just some examples. This is a guide made up by Birdwatch Ireland, talking about barn owls specifically. This is probably a landscape we're all familiar with in Ireland, very agriculture dominated. You can see there's lots of things in there that are kind of missing from what I've just talked about. Whereas this next picture, very, very different. Lots of different habitats existing in a mosaic across the landscape. Very, very important for not just our wildlife, but also the kind of life support systems that they generate. What I mean by that is just barely touching the surface about what ecosystems provide, not just for us, but for everything, for all life on this planet. You have wetlands that clean water. You got trees and bogs which soak up water and reduce flooding. Woodlands and bogs even soak up carbon as well, because it could be a vital fight against climate change. Woodlands buffer the elements. If there's a big storm, you're going to feel it. But if you have a woodland between you and the storm, it's very, very different. And then that benefits all sorts of life, not just us. They also clean the air as well, produce oxygen for us to breathe. And then I've already spoken about invertebrate diversity and improved soil health. And all these things relate to those species that I was talking about. The red squirrels generate the woodland. If we've got good woodland habitats with lots of insects, then it's great for our hedgehogs as well. So trying to get all these things together, working together, is really, really important to preserve not just the species, but the places that they live and the ecosystems which we depend on to survive. So what can you do? You can, everyone, we've all got a responsibility to look after nature a little bit, and there's lots of little things that we can do which can benefit wildlife and nature. The first and really easy thing is create habitat. If you have any space of garden, you can do anything for wildlife. I lived in a apartment, and all I had was a windowsill, and I was able to plant up a little herb garden, which not only was good for me and my cooking, but it created loads of flowers, which is really, really important for pollinators. Haven't even touched on pollinators, bees and butterflies and all sorts. And if you have a much larger garden, you get much more exciting things. I'm building a hedgehog house this autumn, which will be hopefully very exciting. Excuse me. Another thing you can do is volunteer. Go out with your local environmental charities and organizations and go learn about what they do and help them out, because they're always looking for help and extra hands, and because more hands means they can do more good things for wildlife. Have a line in there. It says "Don't destroy." That sounds a bit harsh. What I meant by that is that if you are out in the natural world, please explore it. Please, find out what's going on. But if you do, say, for example, roll over a log to kind of look at the bugs and the beasties underneath, just make sure you put it back, because everything in our natural world is a home for something else. So it's really important to kind of respect that and respect the natural world. Respect would probably be a bit better there. And the last thing, stay curious. I know you're at an age where at the minute you're exploring all these different things, but just stay curious about the nature and wildlife, because it always fascinates you. If you ever watched the David Attenborough documentary, you know just how amazing animals can be all over the world. But you'd be surprised about the habits and life cycles of insects in Ireland, how crazy they can be. So definitely keep reading or look online, ask questions about what you're seeing around you, because being invested in the natural world is the best way to do something for it, because you'll care about it that way. The other things that you can do, please submit your sightings of wildlife. I have an example here of the Irish Hedgehog Survey. Hedgehogs are a very good one to report, because there's nothing you can confuse a hedgehog with. If you've confused a hedgehog with a gerbil, maybe this isn't for you. But you definitely give it a go reporting wildlife. You can report anything. The National Biodiversity Data Centre takes records of everything from hedgehogs to bumblebees to earthworms to plants in your garden. All these things are really important, and you never know what the data that you supply could inform a conservation project in the future. So please give that a look, and really recommend it. If you're ever in the north, I'd recommend going onto the Ulster Wildlife website and reporting some of the species that you see there. We have this wonderful live map of red squirrels and grey squirrels across the whole of Northern Ireland. I think National Biodiversity Centre has something similar as well. The key thing is you can't conserve animals if you don't know where they live. Okay, so it's really important that all of us are contributing, all of us are helping build our knowledge of our wildlife, because it's much easier if there's thousands of people looking than just one ecologist. So yes, please do your bit and submit your sightings of anything that you see that you find interesting in the natural world. Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And I have time for some questions. If anyone wants to put any questions in the chat, we can definitely go through them.
Yeah, I'll give it a few seconds for people to maybe have a little think and type into the chat if you have any questions. Now is a great chance to ask them, or if you want to unmute and speak your question, you are more than welcome to. I'll give you a few minutes, because I know sometimes typing takes a little while.
Absolutely. And if anyone has a question and they're thinking, oh no, that's a stupid question they ask, I think that's a stupid question. If you don't know the answer to something, I guarantee you someone else doesn't know the answer to it. And it's far more valuable learning about what that answer is rather than going into a state of ignorance and not learning. So I encourage you to ask whatever you want. Not just with me, but if you're doing anyone else this week, then ask them questions too. Sorry, go on.
I'm going to ask one just a bit collaboration between Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland. With the National Biodiversity Data Centre, that's a full Ireland approach, is it? Or
excellent question. In theory, yes. But Northern Ireland has their own biological recording centre as well, called CEDAR. But they both share records, basically. So if someone from the north wants records from the south, then they just go to the National Biodiversity Data Centre, and there's no issues with sharing that data.
Great. There's a question in the chat there. Could a school put up a barn owl box, or would that have to be in an approved site?
That is an interesting question. If you wanted to put up a barn owl box kind of like on school grounds, that probably wouldn't be something that we would facilitate or Birdwatch Ireland would facilitate. But if you wanted to do one yourself, you absolutely can. And it's a really, really cool project. There's quite a lot of work goes into building them, and then getting them up in the tree can be quite difficult. So just make sure that you're doing it in the appropriate way. But barn owl boxes can be used by lots of other birds as well if they don't get used by barn owls. Your best chance is if you're kind of in a rural area and you have a standalone tree that kind of like looks out over the landscape, then that's kind of perfect and ideal. But if you're kind of like in an urban area, I probably wouldn't recommend putting up a barn owl box. I would just go for a smaller bird box instead, because you're far more likely to get smaller birds using it than a barn owl, and barn owl boxes can be quite expensive to make. But I don't want to curb any enthusiasm. You go and do what you want to do. If you want specific advice, if you go onto the Birdwatch Ireland website, they have lots of information about putting up barn owl boxes, and if you are possibly in an area that they'd be interested in helping you out with.
Excellent. And then there's another question, which is Rangashay in Holy Cross is wondering when Ulster Wildlife was founded.
You know, that's a brilliant question, and I don't know the answer to it off the top of my head. I want to say in the late 60s, early 70s. We've been going for a wee while now. It's been a relatively small organisation, but in the last kind of 10, 15 years, we've kind of expanded what we do. And we have lots of different projects now that work on peatland restoration, and we're marine habitat restoration. I talked a little bit about the oyster reintroduction, salt marsh restoration. We have our nature reserves, and we have a community engagement team, and then we have me and my colleague who do the terrestrial species stuff. So we've been going for about 50 years, I want to say, and we've grown a lot in that time, which is great.
Class. And we have another question. Are there any opportunities for schools to volunteer with Ulster Wildlife, like example around Bangor in the north?
Around Bangor, very good. Okay. Definitely get in touch. If you go onto the Ulster Wildlife website and email our info box, we can certainly see what we can do. I'm not going to say yes because there's difficulties with taking schools out, but there are 2 nature reserves in Bangor in Northern Ireland, and they're always looking help, especially at the minute when it comes to cutting the meadows. We have to rake up the meadows, and more hands make it so much easier. So please do contact the info box and ask about helping out at the Balloon Nature Reserves.
Fab. So I'm just going to briefly share my screen again there for a second, and I'll resume. So first of all, thanks so much, Ross. That was fantastic, and I really liked how there were some videos in there as well. The little hedgehog sneeze, so cute. Funnily enough, I love hedgehogs, but red squirrels are one of my all-time favorite animals. I think because it's so rare to see one, it's special almost when I was younger. So we've kind of come to the end of the workshop there, but just so you know, there's a few other things that if you're looking to get involved, you're looking to take action and do more stuff in your community or school, there's a few things. So ECO-UNESCO run the Young Environmentalist Awards. So let's say today you've had an idea, you want to do something in your school or your community. If you join the Young Environmentalist Awards, it gives kind of a structure to help you explore that project and then enter it into the competition. It's huge. We get projects from all over, hundreds projects, and it's a really good way of getting involved in the community at home, but also across the island. And then we have workshops. So you want to learn more. The workshops team go around to schools across the island. Oh, sorry, the SD. Can people see the get involved slide? Or is that?
I can.
You can. Okay.
Might just be me.
It's just Antonio. That's okay. So the workshops team, they go across the island. That's where one of the programs I'm based on, and we deliver workshops on waste, fast fashion, marine life, biodiversity, kind of anything and everything. So if you want one in your school, reach out to us and we can look into organising that. And then lastly, we have a couple of different groups that kind of operate like an after school basis. So one is the Youth Climate Justice Group, and the other is Youth for Sustainable Development. And if you are interested in kind of delving a bit deeper into those two topics, would recommend checking those out. And then lastly, and I think you'll be emailed this as well, if you have any feedback, we would really appreciate it. So Eco Week runs every year, and the way that we make it better and improve it is by taking on feedback from those who participated in the workshops. So if there was information you wanted to hear which you didn't, or you really enjoyed a particular element, let us know, and it will help us inform workshops in the future. And then lastly, this is just the start of Eco Week. There's loads more sessions happening over the next couple of days. Tomorrow, gender and climate justice and energy and me. There's bits on fresh water. There's stuff on food, waste, nature, and mental health. So if you enjoyed this, you might enjoy one of the others as well. And if you have any questions or queries, or you just want to get in touch, we're on social media, or you can contact us via email or via our website. And we welcome any communication if you have any questions. But that's essentially it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our speaker. Thank you so much to the schools and the groups who participated. You were super engaged, which is really nice when you're doing something online. And yeah, I hope you have a lovely afternoon, and maybe we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. Thanks.